What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Straight Up Tennis. I'm joined here again with Hunter and Alex Joseph. So today we're going to be starting out the podcast discussing the revised schedule on the ATP World Tour, Challenger Tour, and the Futures Tour. So the ATP, they announced the overall revised schedule that's going to be returning in Washington, D.C. On August the 14th. And then after that, they're going to be doing the Cincinnati Open played at the U.S. Open and the U.S. Open at Flushing Meadows still. So what are y'all guys' takes on the revised schedule, and how do you think that this is overall going to play out, especially with the clay court season being directly after that, all the travel and transport from players?
Yeah, Locke.
So can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. I was telling you guys, actually canceled the City Open due to travel issues with a lot of the international players coming in. So, that in and of itself, in the title itself of the article, it was saying it would be a pretty devastating blow to the U.S. Open. And I guess by extension, probably Cincinnati as well. So, I don't know if that's going to end up, I don't know how that's all going to end up playing out, but if, Cincinnati gets canceled, that could be huge. It's already, you already kind of mentioned, Jeremy, it's already kind of in question just due to the fact that basically anybody who's going to play the U.S. Open series, if we want to call it that, in Cincinnati, Washington, U.S. Open, are basically foregoing the opportunity of playing those first two clay court tournaments because they will be in quarantine after the U.S. And so, with
Did
there
they
being
say
more
for sure that you have to do a 2-week quarantine if you go back?
You have to. So I think it is essentially a fact then that anybody who plays the hard court season won't be able to play the majority of the clay court season. Obviously, they'd still be able to play Roland Garros, which is, for at least some of these top players, probably the main priority. But with there being more ranking points at stake in the clay court season, and with the clay court season being pushed back farther, I'm guessing you probably will see a lot more players opt to play in the clay court events than in the hard court events. But it could be an interesting thing where we see more of an old school type tennis where you had guys that would just play on the clay court tour. Back in the day, you saw more specialists, right? You had more clay court specialists who'd come out they'd play the clay court ATP tour swing, but then the rest of the year they're just playing straight clay court challengers. They're not even playing on hard.
Yeah, especially with the Australian Open back in the day, a lot of people they'd win all other 3 Grand Slams, but then you'd see that their best result at the Aussie would be a second round or a third round because they only played it once or twice because the travel was too far.
And it was just a weird time of the year back then. But I'm talking more specifically back in the day when you would see court, surface specialists, because that's just kind of how the game was played. You would have grass court specialists, which you don't see anymore. You would have clay court specialists, which you see, but the clay court players will all play on hard courts too. So it's, we're going to see guys probably have to choose between that hard court and clay court season. But I'm expecting most of the top guys to still play both Grand Slam events if they go forward. Like I said earlier with the City Open, we'll see with that and how that plays out. But I'm becoming more and more pessimistic about all this stuff as it starts to unfold, just because, the way I'm starting to view things is people are just holding off as late as they possibly can how to cancel things instead of canceling it earlier, so it's we'll see. But I think that's definitely what they're doing with schools right now, saying it's going to go online, and most schools are still saying they're going to be open in the fall, but I think they're just waiting for as long as possible to get as many people to pay basically before they cancel. And I could see that definitely being the case with these events as well, which is unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. What
Yeah,
about you, Hunter?
my mom's a middle school teacher, and they just pushed back the start of her school year. So already
There's,
starting to see that a little bit.
yeah.
But my take on the clay court season is it's extremely difficult to be a clay court specialist when you've got Rafa Nadal playing, opting to not play the hard court season, prepared just for hard or clay courts, start with Madrid and Rome, and then
We lost you for a
remember?
second, Hunter.
Yeah, we
We
lost you, Hunter.
lost you for a second, Hunter.
Which part?
You were talking about how Rafa is opting. So is Rafa opting to completely forego the
Yeah, he's already
hard
said
court,
he's not playing the hard court season.
including the U.S. Open?
Yeah, so you already know that some players
Wow.
some of the top 10
I did not
players
know that.
who are kind of on the edge, maybe a quarterfinalist, semifinalist at previous Grand Slams. They're really hoping to play the hard court for the chance to win the U.S. Open.
Yeah, the
with no
defending
Federer, no
champion.
Nadal.
The defending champion's not going to be playing the tournament, so it's
And
like
no Roger.
no Roger.
So I think for a lot of players, they're kind of hoping this hard court swing will happen.
So you have
But,
Dominic Thiem going in as like a number 2 seed for the tournament,
Yeah,
essentially.
And a heavy favorite, probably, or not a heavy favorite, but
he's probably
one
my
of the
favorite to
heavy
win it.
favorites.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking team to win the U.S. Open.
I'm not sure yet, but I think it's
You get-
between. I'm leaning that way. With all the tournaments he's been playing and all that. I think he's in form. I think this is his year. Anyway.
We were joking off air that teams been playing a tournament every weekend since Corona started. So, which is kind of true. It's funny. It's funny.
I don't know how he's done it, but he has.
Dude, I was reading this. Let me see if I can pull it up. I was reading this thing that Berrettini was talking about on ESPN, and it said basically talking about how July 10th, Berrettini loses a semifinal on red clay to Rublev during an exhibition. 24 hours later, Berrettini triumphed in the UTS semifinal on hard courts in the south of France. With sweat on his brow, Berrettini then bolted to an exhibition played on grass in cool Berlin. In less than a week, the pro-Italian had hit the trifecta of nations, surfaces, and even climates.
Jeez.
So it's like these guys are just flying all over Europe, just playing exhibitions, basically. Like that's what they're doing right now.
They're staying ready. They're staying ready.
And that's what, if I basically, and I'm not going to read this whole thing, but that's basically what he's saying is that like he has to stay fit and prepared for the resumption of the ATP. I mean, I think one of the quotes he says is, what we need as players is to play matches. I didn't take these events like an exhibition. I try to play them like I would an ATP, like I'm a professional tennis player. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, these guys are this ESPN article, it was pretty interesting. It was just talking about the whole how tennis as a whole has kind of changed during the whole shutdown. So interesting talking about
it all
the
starts
whole
with the City Open in DC. If hopefully they play that tournament, and then players like Berrettini have a good chance of making a run at this U.S. Open. He ended.
Yep, absolutely.
One of the things that I was going to say is that speaking of the U.S. Open, Nishikori came out and made a statement essentially saying that he was in favor of having the U.S. Open with no ranking points just because of the unfair playing field. I mean, you're going to essentially see, especially with the division of the Cincinnati Masters versus the 2 clay court Masters, 2 completely different fields, like almost probably no overlap at all amongst the 2. And, him being a U.S. Open finalist in 2014, like, I mean, his word definitely still goes a long way with how high up he is on the tour. But, I mean, what are your initial thoughts of that and it being a high-priced exhibition tournament?
When you consider the prize money, I guess it kind of makes sense, but the ranking points are so important. And players like Berrettini and Thiem who have been playing all summer, staying ready for these tournaments, if if it's safe enough and they can get New York's approval to play the U.S. Open, I don't see why they shouldn't just play it and kind of just expect everyone to play. Like, I guess with such a quick turnaround from the hard court to the clay court season, players are going to have to make a lot of tough choices, right? But that's kind of just where we are in tennis right now. And I think they might as well just award the points for all hard court tournaments as long as we're allowed to play them.
There's almost no practical way that you could not give out the points at the U.S. Open, because if you think about it like this, there's no way for a player to go play the U.S. Open and then not play both of the clay court masters. They're essentially surrendering 4,000 possible points just for the title of winning the U.S. Open. Is that actually a possibility that people are going to do that? I don't think that's
it's ridiculous. I think, we're talking about this, but I'm fairly certain the USDA has already just flat out rejected that that idea.
It doesn't really make sense.
Just because of, exactly what we're saying. I mean, it's just with, everything that goes into these tournaments and the amount of, especially on top of the fact that they're giving up, they have to choose the U.S. Open series over the clay court series. It just really doesn't have any sort of practicality.
Yeah, if you take away the points from the U.S., you would have to take away the points from the clay court tournaments that you're missing out on. It's not fair to give some players points and others not.
Yeah. There's also, I'm reading on a New York Times article, and they're saying it would somehow affect broadcasting agreements, and I don't know how that would specifically do that, but I mean, basically, you can't at all. You can't make it an exhibition.
It makes the choices of players extremely interesting. Like what they opt to do.
I think it's gonna basically gonna fall into or it's gonna basically come down to what surface people prefer. I mean, to an extent, maybe if you're on the fence, maybe you're somebody like Tsitsipas or Medvedev or both of those guys I would say lean hard court. I'm trying to think of someone who's equally as good on clay and hard. But both of those guys
during this hard court swing, Medvedev
was really good. But then he was also
every tournament.
But he's also incredible on clay. He's also made the finals of 2 1,000s, I believe.
It's Zverev too.
Zverev as well. So it's like these guys are good on both surfaces, and they're probably going to lean clay just because they can probably train on it easier in Europe. They can have more time to train, and there's more money. There's more points on the line. So, yeah, in that regards, I'm a little shook that Nadal's officially not going to be at the U.S. Open. I can't believe more so because I'm surprised I hadn't heard that yet. But
I hadn't heard of the official announcement. The only thing that I had actually seen was a video that was leaked, I think, by the ATP World Tour Tennis Channel or the Rafa Academy of him playing on clay for the past few weeks, and essentially people coming up with this is a huge hint that he was no longer going to be playing at the U.S. Open or on any of the hard courts. And he's also been pretty vocal about the whole situation in New York City anyways, and his worries about that. Let's go into the actual U.S. Open and Western Southern Open itself. So, I mean, breaking this down, Western Southern Open qualifying starts the 20th, and the actual tournament starts the 22nd. U.S. Open August 31st. Western Southern Open. Is there going
to be qualifying? Will there be qualifying?
Not for the U.S. Open.
Not for the U.S. Okay, that's what I thought.
So total compensation, $60 million for both the Western Southern Open and the U.S. Open, but they're dividing $3.3 million between the WTA and the ATP to account for players that would have been impacted that could have played qualifying at the U.S. Open, or because the doubles draw is now split to 32 teams to pay those players as well.
Okay.
Did you say the prize money is the same?
The prize money that they're splitting to cover the both tours for like money that they would have lost, but it's $60 million for both.
Total.
Yeah, total for
men
both.
and women.
Men and women.
We need these tournaments to happen.
And if I'm almost certain, the U.S. Open does give equal prize money for
Yep,
the men
they
and
do.
women.
Yeah, they do. So,
But yeah, all players guaranteed travel into New York City. Their first hotel rooms paid for, and they're giving players the option to get these $40,000 houses for rent outside of Manhattan. So I mean, obviously that's going to be the top players, but yeah, they give the whole layout
That's
of like
fine.
dining, locker
yeah, that
rooms,
is.
social distancing, showers. Going to be constant testing, and players are going to have to wearing face masks. While they're going around the facility, while they're navigating through their training sessions and whatnot. But I guess one of the concerns from a lot of the really big players, especially like I know that Andy Murray was kind of discussing this, was, what happens if players disregard those guidelines? Can you realistically have them on lockdown when they have a quarterfinal match tomorrow, semifinal match tomorrow? If they test positive for coronavirus, do they
Yeah.
automatically forfeit that match? What happens if the final can't be played because someone has coronavirus? There's just so many things going on.
I mean, I'd said earlier in the podcast, I'm kind of taking back what I was saying in terms of, I'm certain they're going to cancel it. I'm not certain, and especially with tennis, like you see in other sports, UFC and golf, particularly, those are the two that are kind of back up and running. They're doing it right. So I think tennis has got to just kind of look to them and see what are they doing to make sure that their players don't get it, and basically kind of addressing some of the points you were talking about. What happens if somebody does, like, but I'm fairly certain that like these players are just straight up under lockdown right now. And luckily tennis is very similar to the two sports that I just brought up in terms of their essentially individual-ish sports. They're not team sports. They're you're more easily able to social distance than, I mean, maybe not in UFC, but that the fighters have been tested and it's safe and all this stuff. But you don't have whole teams to worry about. But yeah, I guess you just got to look to those sports and see what they've done to make it a success. I know, at least in golf, there have been players that have tested positive, and I think when that happens, they just leave. I think it's as simple, like they just forfeit the tournament. I think they leave and they got to go quarantine. So
one of the interesting things that I found was I was under the impression that the U.S. Open was going to provide, which they are providing, transportation between the hotels and the National Tennis Center. But I was actually very shocked that they're providing a shuttle service that's going to be like a 55 passenger bus operating between 25 and 50% capacity, as opposed to doing like individual vehicles that could just go back and forth between.
That seems a little bit
hotels.
less safe for sure.
It seems really sketchy that that's the option.
That doesn't, I mean, especially when you could just maybe get a taxi or an Uber, something more private. It's just, it doesn't, that's a little interesting. But
I think
I guess if they're
in the end, you just kind of have to expect the players to be
safe.
professional. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Just kind of go about their business. Like they're there.
That's what they're doing. They're there to, exactly. They're there to play tennis. Like that's their job. Like, we're talking about, players speaking up. Kyrgios is probably one of the most prominent ones that have come up to mind. And it's just,
Alex, we lost you for a second.
he's angry.
Alex, we lost you. Yeah.
Jeremy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So hopefully it's a little bit better.
Yeah, this is good.
So, no, I mean, it's a tough situation overall, but I mean, where did you guys lose me?
You had just talked about Kyrgios.
Okay. Well, I was just saying how, he's had some issues, I guess, about how the U.S. Open's going to continue with Corona happening. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's ridiculous to me that he, like his points don't really make sense when you think about the fact that like the U.S. Open is trying their very best to be safe, and they're just
What are
trying
his
to
points?
they're trying to make he's angry that coronavirus, I guess, is going on during this time, but it's like at the end of the day, sports have to like sports like that's his main point. I'm pretty sure, that like he's just angry that it's happening, but like first off, he's not being forced to play. He can play the clay court season like a lot of these other players are. So I don't know exactly why he's angry, but it's just, to me, he's like, we're gonna have to go back home and quarantine. And it's like, yeah, that's just like that's the protocol.
normal.
Like you have to do those things. I don't know why it's the normal thing to do. I don't know. It's just like it really didn't make sense to me what he was saying. But
I think his
yeah,
behavior overall is he's one of the least professional guys on tour. So
yeah, you kind of have to expect that. Yeah, you're very, very right. Like he doesn't go to these tournaments and view it as work. He views it as like, I guess, something totally different.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
don't know if there was an official statement about this that was made, like in terms of if there's a specific guideline that's being put in place, but there hasn't really been anything said about players having guests over to their hotel rooms, like whether it be through dating apps and whatnot,
Yeah,
which
of course.
which
It's
is
so
That's
funny.
one of the
interesting.
examples that
That's
was
funny.
brought up. And you see players all the time
In the
when
NBA, in the
in the
NBA
NBA.
specifically.
But
Yep.
even like you have the interview with Benoit Paire, like I think it was in Australia, where he was talking about like one of the best things
The
about
Rebel? Are you
Australia
talking
was
about the Rebel?
the
Are you talking about the
Rebel.
Rebel?
I'm talking about the Rebel. Is like the girl situation. And so like I feel like there are a lot of players that,
He would say that.
typically when they go to these tournaments, they have a day or two off, whether it be before the tournament or after, you'll see them go to like
Yeah.
pubs, clubs, whatnot, just hang out,
Of
have a good
course.
time. So like
Mhm.
there hasn't been anything said about guests or anything like that. And I don't know if there's
So
going to
funny
be
that that's what Benoit Paire is worried about.
I'm also like just curious, like if there's going to be any sort of like hotline in place where you have like in the NBA bubble where you have players reporting
The
other
snitch.
players for
The
certain
snitch.
things.
The
It's
Snitch
like,
hotline.
No, you're gonna get like Djokovic snitching on Nadal the night before the finals to try to get him just kicked out of the tournament. So I mean, who knows? But yeah, I guess they will all be technically staying at the same hotel. So unless they're staying at the $40,000.
Like if they test positive, the only person that really hurts is them, right? Unless they're like really not being careful around the other players around them.
of
But
course.
if they're forced to withdraw from their match, they lose money, they lose points, and now they have to go back in quarantine. And all they just
One
came
question
to
I've
the
been
US
thinking
for no
about.
reason.
One question I was thinking about this whole time is like, if you're in a room with someone that has, like, if you're in a room of 20 people and one of them has corona, what are your, and you're in the room for an hour just, talking with people, maybe you come in contact, I mean, maybe you talk to them, maybe you don't, like, what are your chances of getting, contracting the virus yourself?
I don't think
is
anyone
this
knows
is
the
this
answer to
with
that.
is this without masks or?
I mean, say it's with masks. Say it's because, you would hope that at this point, most people are wearing masks.
I mean, with masks in a certain radius, you have about like a 1.5% transmission rate if both people are wearing masks and one of them's not positive and one of them is positive. But if you're in a pretty open room that's not very compact and you're not in like that level, that like range of intimacy, which is like that 12 to 18 inches, there's, like the thing is that like when you're transmitting coronavirus, you have to do it like essentially like through those droplets. And when you cough or when you talk, for the most part, those droplets just go directly to the ground. When you sneeze, they kind of linger a little bit longer, but you need to be in like within almost those 6 feet for you to realistically be able to actually contract it. But it would also have to be without masks on, essentially. At least the carrier
Okay.
without masks on.
I don't think they have to worry about that. And
I don't think they'll ever be in the situation because they're going to put the social distancing there together. The question that I had though about it is that, typically at these grand slams and big tournaments, you'll have, either younger guys or like up and coming guys come in as hitting partners.
Mm-hmm.
As the tournament progresses, it's still great that you can have like a select group of people that you can practice with that, if Djokovic is playing Nadal in the final tomorrow, that Djokovic doesn't have to hit with Nadal in a practice session.
Right.
Like I'm
Yeah.
wondering how, like, as people go home and the tournament actually gets smaller and smaller, what's going to be in place for them.
I would think the solution to that would just be they probably have coaches that they could hit with or trainers that they can hit with. Like, I don't think it would come down to having to hit with Nadal in a hypothetical Nadal Djokovic.
Because you can only
I'm sure the
bring
players
two,
are allowed a
you,
small
But
team.
yeah, it isn't.
you can bring two people with you.
That is interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Wow. So
that's
you're
one
right.
of
There
the
is
things
chance
that
that
the
like
tournament just has to figure that out. They'll either assign hitting partners. Like, you have to have hitting partners for a professional
Mhm.
tournament.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it can't be your opponent. That's silly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So
so,
I mean,
do you guys hear about the Dominic team rule? That's not actually what it's
Mm-mm.
called, but I just call it that.
That,
So he plays Kitzbühel every year,
mhm.
right.
and so it's the week after the U.S. Open. With this new schedule,
Okay.
and so the rule is the top 10 players can't play Kitzbühel unless they played the U.S. Open. So
What?
he can't play that tournament
Unless
only for the top 10. So it's really just for him. But you
Uh-huh.
can't play that tournament if you play the U.S. So he would have to skip the U.S. to play that tournament and go to the clay court season.
Right.
So I don't understand why they did that.
But that
so funny.
tournament-
That's why you call it the top. That's why
the
you
next
call
part
it
of the rule
team
is he could play Kitzbühel if he loses in the first week of the U.S. Open.
Oh. Okay.
Which makes no sense, because wouldn't you have to quarantine for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
I mean, it's also
I
varied
don't
like
know
by
exactly.
country for the quarantining thing.
That's true.
Yeah, that is
very
true. But
Austria, I
the
don't know
rule
how
just makes
Austria
no
does.
sense and kind of sucks for
Yeah.
Dominic team.
and it seems like it's directly targeting Dominic teams.
Considering he's the only top 10 player that
It's
plays
the only
it.
it's the only person that would ever affect. Yeah. And it's only for top 10 players, which is like, that's so odd.
And it's
That's
a
so
terrible
odd.
rule, because like he's obviously going to choose to play the U.S. Open.
Yeah, and it's
Well,
like
yeah,
he's a huge
He's one of the
draw.
favorites to win it.
I remember we watched that tournament last year, right? Who
Yeah, we
did he
did.
beat? Did he beat Albert Ramos Vinolas? He beat.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
It's funny. It's funny. But yeah, no. I guess moving on. What do we want to talk about next?
We're in the clay courts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess are we gonna move past the U.S. Open? I guess, or are we officially on to like Kitzbühel? I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. Like I said, I'm expecting more of the players, to lean towards playing the clay court season, solely because there's more points at stake, and it might just end up being. Yeah, it seems like the easier situation to put yourself in.
I mean, I'm really interested in seeing what how there's that like adjusted Grand Slam rating system where like, each Grand Slam can be like inflated or deflated based on like the level of difficulty of the tournament.
U.S. Open's probably going to be one of the lower ones in recent memory.
Probably one of the easiest of the decade.
For sure.
And you've seen so many more upset wins in the past, 15 years at the U.S. Open, more so than any other Grand Slam. I mean, you have like Fed's dominance there for 5 years, but then after that, you still have almost all of the Grand Slam champions that have, won a Grand Slam since this like big 3, big 4, big 5 dominance has come at the U.S. Open.
Because it's been Del Potro, Cilic, who else?
And if you're talking like big four, out of the big 4, you also have Wawrinka.
Wawrinka. Yeah,
but
Wawrinka.
Other than that, that's it.
Yeah. And then that's it.
It's going to be an interesting tournament this year.
And you can't really count Wawrinka, because Wawrinka kind of falls more in line with Murray, where he's won multiple slams at multiple events. the only guys that really in the past 10 years, besides the big four plus Wawrinka, so let's call them the big five, is the two U.S. Opens, Cilic and Del Potro, I believe, right?
Yep.
That's shocking. That's absolutely shocking.
But then you have even like the breakthroughs of a lot of players, making Grand Slam finals at the U.S. Open. You have Kevin Anderson, you have
Nishikori,
you have Cilic, you have Medvedev.
Medvedev, yeah.
I mean, all those guys. I mean, the most consistent breakthrough at that tournament is at that tournament.
Is usually at that tournament. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I guess Kevin Anderson ended up making a Wimbledon final as well and just got waxed by Djokovic. I mean, just got absolutely waxed by Djokovic. I just remember cracking up because I woke up in the morning kind of early Sunday and I was like, I got to watch it. It's the Wimbledon final. I turned it on. First game, Djokovic breaks Anderson, and I just turned. I think I just went back to bed. I was like, this is a complete joke.
What was the final score against Federer?
I can't even.
Against Isner?
His match against Federer?
Yeah, wasn't it 16-14 in the fifth?
Yeah, I think it was. And then he ended up beating
26,
Isner
24.
25. Yeah, he ends up beating Isner after that, even crazier. Was his match against Federer 16-14? I thought it was 13-11 or something.
I think it was 13-11.
I know it went to extras.
It went to extras and Federer came back, or Federer was up 2-0, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I mean, that was the tournament too, where they really rethought the whole fifth set, the never ending.
That's when they set up.
No, because it was just they changed it the next year. Yeah, they changed it the next year. I think.
Yeah, and that's
the
when
Kevin Anderson rule because Kevin Anderson. Yeah, but I mean Anderson had no chance, anyways. I mean the dude had absolutely no chance to begin with.
But I'm a fan of the 12-all tiebreaker at Wimbledon.
Yeah, it's really
after what we saw this year.
I saw something saying that at 6-5 in the fifth set against Federer in the Wimbledon final in, I guess, 2019, it was Djokovic asked the chair umpire, he didn't know when the tiebreaker was. He's like, is it a tiebreaker at 10-all? Because he thought the Aussie, they played at 10-all, right? Or no, they played at 6-all, but it's a
10-point,
10-point tiebreaker. Okay. But so I don't even know where Djokovic got the 10-all from, but he has tiebreaker at 10-all, and obviously he gets corrected, and then they end up going to the tiebreaker. And we all know what happens. But he's something else. He's something else.
I think that I'm just more so looking to see what other players are actually doing in terms of, especially the lead up for the clay court season. I mean, I have no real prediction other than seeing some of these exhibitions over where players are in their actual training, other than just that select group of players that keep playing these tournaments every now.
Yeah, the younger, generally the younger guys, you see them playing a little bit more.
But there's just been no announcements.
You have no idea.
There's no transparency in this at all.
I think once we see if the tournaments are being played and who's going to be playing them, we'll be able to kind of break it down a little bit to make it easier on those match predictions.
So I guess I have this overall question for y'all, and that would be, what is your opinion on how compact the schedule actually is? Because you have 5 major tournaments being played consecutively over 7 weeks. What do you think of
It's not good. To play that many tournaments.
Players not having played in months.
It's going to come down to choices. Players are going to have to make choices between which tournaments they're going to play, it's pretty interesting. But I think as a tour, they had to get all these tournaments in because the revenue that they get and just kind of being able to keep the ATP tour afloat, support it going into next season especially. I think they had to play these tournaments. It's just going to be a tough decision on the players, which ones are you going to play. And it'll be interesting to see.
I know that the U.S. Open came out and said that they were spending I mean, way more money on the U.S. Open. Just, I mean, obviously they're not going to be they're not getting, as much revenue. Maybe they'll make it up through, television, but I mean, they're kind of taking huge cuts in terms of, especially with their support for their players. I know Wimbledon gave out like 10 million pounds to, to help support players, which was, a really good thing. I'm glad that tournaments are doing those things. But yeah, I'm also wondering if there's going to be any shift in, prize money in general and what goes on for the remainder of the tour.
What is the situation with fans in both the U.S. and the French? Do we know exactly what the plans for spectators are at this point?
I know that the U.S. Open is not going to be having any spectators. I would assume that it would be the same for the French Open.
I'm fairly certain from what I do know about the situation. I think they are trying to have spectators at the French Open. So
I was
with
going to
that,
say, I think it would have to be social distance though.
I think they're trying to have reduced fans at all of the clay court matches.
I guess in Europe it's a lot better. It's a lot better of a situation than it is here in the United States.
It's just really unfortunate though that the players are coming from New York, literally the worst place on the planet.
A lot of the times, but those players aren't going to be there till Roland Garros, so it would be as sad as it would be to see the hard court season be altogether canceled. Maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing to finish the season on a good note. Maybe have the ATP Tour Finals at the end of the year, or maybe an indoor swing.
The WTA
towards the end of the year
is
it seems like. Go ahead.
I was going to say the Asia swing, like you've got the Shanghai Masters, Tokyo, those tournaments, and then like the Swiss indoors leading up to the ATP Finals. Those tournaments, as of right now, they're scheduled to be played. It just kind of it depends how the hard court swing and the clay court swing kind of play out.
Yeah, because the WTA is playing their Asian swing and ending at the Shenzhen, the WTA finals for them. I know that
their tour finals.
Yeah, those are all being played out. I think that Simona Halep came out and said that she is only going to stay in Europe, so she'll play the French Open. But after that, she's not going to go to any other of the tournaments, especially the ones in Asia. I would assume that the Asian tournaments are going to happen for the remainder of the ATP Tour, but also I lost my train of thought.
Well, I can pick up from there. I was just going to say, logistically, the U.S. just seems a lot more challenging right now. So that's kind of why I say the things I was saying, as far as maybe it's not the worst idea to just get canceled altogether. But I get why people want to get this thing up and running. It makes a lot of sense in that regards. So I hope it still gets played, but I don't think it would be that terrible to see it canceled and moved on. But
I think it would make the rest of the season a little bit more interesting.
Yeah,
to see how the players perform on the clay court season, because it is a very compact schedule. So yeah, I think as a fan of tennis, you want to see the hard court season happen. I think overall it's more of a toss-up than the clay court season. I think the clay courts are much more likely to happen, and I think either way we have a lot to look forward to with those tournaments, and then the Asia swing, and then ending the year with the ATP finals. I think as a fan we have a lot of tournaments and a lot of good matches to look forward to.
Yeah, so essentially the Challenger Tour is going to resume in Prague on August 17th and in Italy, but then the Futures Tour is going to resume in Kazakhstan in the first week of September. So do y'all have anything else to add?
I hope they do it.
No, I think Go ahead, Hunter.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to say I hope they do a lot to help the players that are trying to make their breakthrough on the Futures Tour, the Challengers Tour. I think those guys probably need a bit of financial support, a bit of help trying to get back into tournaments and get back traveling and all that. So maybe some of the prize money cuts could go to players like that. But I think if these tournaments are able to get to be played, I think overall the tour will rebound pretty well going into next year.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's going to be a lot to look forward to in 2021 if we're able to at least get something officially in the books for this year, you know, so especially with the Olympics coming in 2021. So, you know, I'm just hoping to get some tennis, like Hunter was saying. You know, it's going to be a close call with the hard court season, but, you know, there's going to be a lot of good tennis played in the clay court season, that's for sure. And, you know, the Asian tour, which I think is set to, you know, officially set their tournament dates pretty soon, gets underway. I think that's going to be great. And hopefully we can end with the ATP Tour finals. And, but, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, it's looking better than it was before. And there's other sports that have gotten underway. So, you know, why not tennis? I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here.
So,
That all you got?
but yeah, I think that's all we got for today. You can close us out, Jeremy, if you want.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching Straight Up Tennis. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. All of the social media details will be in the bio. So let us know what y'all think. Let us know what you want to see. And see y'all next time.
Yeah, hopefully we can. We're really trying hard to get onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so that's going to be coming really, really soon. And I can't wait for that. That's going to be huge for us. So looking forward to it. I had fun today with you guys. So
see you guys next time.
Yeah, see you guys next time.